Hi Tiari State School, it's Lucy and Matilda here. We're very excited to be answering your questions and thank you so much for sending them in. We're going to go through them now and answer the ones that Miss Malcolmson has sent through to us. So from Mackenzie, what if you get sick or hurt, how will you get help? So Matilda and I will both be wearing personal flotation devices which help us stay afloat in the water, and attached to that is what's called an EPIRB, which is an emergency positioning beacon. Basically what happens if we get into trouble or if we need help, we press a button and that's going to send a signal to the Coast Guard. Depending on where we are, that'll either be in America or Canada. From there, the Coast Guard will come, and because they have a signal from us that tells them exactly where we are, they'll be able to come and pick us up. So whether we get lost or separated, or if we get caught in a big storm and we need help, or we're injured, or our kayak breaks, anything like that, which is unlikely to happen but still a possibility, we can get the help we need.
But we will also have a first aid kit, so if there's any issues that we can fix ourselves, then we have some bandages and medicine on site to help each other.
And in some of the areas we will be doing, like we will be around other fishermen or people who live in small towns in some of the areas, so it might be that they can help us out and we don't need to do that either.
Yeah. So second question is a good one. From Grace and Felicity, where will you go to the toilet? So we're not used to this, but you actually have to make sure that you go to the toilet quite far away from your camp, because otherwise the smell can attract things like cougars and bears, which we do not have in Australia. So we're going to make sure that we do that. We're also going to make sure that we bury anything very deep and do it away from rivers so it doesn't go into the streams and things like that. The main issue is when we're kayaking, if we really need to pee when we're kayaking, so we're going to have to pee into a bottle or a container basically, and then bury that when we get to camp. Or
well, we won't bury the container.
Yeah, we can put, not the container, but what's in the container.
So we have things to help us do that, and when we get to camp we just pour it in the hole. And the only thing that we bury is poo, pee or paper, the 3P rules. So when you go camping, if you have to go camping and go to the toilet in the bush, the only thing you bury is poo, pee or paper. We leave nothing else behind.
And we will not be peeing in our kayaks.
Nope. So the next question is, what if there is a storm on your paddle? And that's from Felicity, Zen and Zania. So there will definitely be a storm. At some point during the 3 months of our kayak, there's going to be a storm. So we have a couple of ways to make sure that we don't get into trouble. We will have a UHF radio, and with that radio we can get the local weather reports, so we'll know if there's a storm coming. And if there's any winds that are higher than 20 knots, then we will probably consider whether or not we need to be on the water. Anything from 25 to 30 knots, we're unlikely to go kayaking that day. And we will do everything in our power to make sure that if there's a storm, we're on land, snuggled up in our tents, reading a book. And we won't be paddling in any conditions that are stormy and risky. So it's really important to know your limitations and make sure you don't take silly risks.
Yeah. Next question, where will you get drinking water from and how will you carry it if you're not using plastic water bottles? And that's from Felicity and Xavier. So we will, luckily in Canada and Alaska there's a lot of glaciers and there's a lot of rivers and there's a lot of waterfalls. So we will need to carry what we need for that day, maybe for 2. But we're not too stressed about having to treat the water as much as we do over here in Australia. We'll be taking it in, we'll be collecting the water in bladders, so they're about 5 to 10 litre bladders, and that bladder sits in our kayak and helps balance out the kayak. And we also have our own water bottles, like metal water bottles, or yeah, so we definitely don't need to use any plastic water bottles on the trip. Yeah.
So the next question is from Addison and Keely, is what if we get lost or what if we lose our map? Which is a good question. So if we get lost, we will have a GPS with us which tells us where we are. So in the absolute emergency we can use that. we do have what we call charts, because maps are for on land. On water, they're called charts. So we have marine charts. We have 45 of them to cover our trip, which is pretty crazy. If we lose our charts, we do have our backup, which is GPS, but ultimately we can always paddle until we find reception and then call someone to help us out. But basically we're going to work very hard not to lose our maps. So it's a matter of being responsible for what you have with you, making sure that you know where everything is. When we're on the water, anything that's not locked inside our boats will be tied to our boats in some way. So I think, you know, as you get older and you get more experience, you figure out how to make sure you don't lose things or leave things behind, and it's about being responsible for your things and making sure you don't leave them in the environment somewhere.
And then we have a question from Keely and Zania. How will you have clean clothes, and what if you get really cold or really hot? So a good question. It's very likely that we are going to be a little bit smelly sometimes on the trip, because there won't be any hot showers that we can jump into with soap.
And there's no washing machines.
There's no washing machines. So what we'll do is, on good days where it's sunny and we think that our clothes will dry, we'll clean our clothes in using just river water and hang them up to dry whenever we can. We'll also jump in to the rivers every now and then and have a quick wash. I think it'll be very quick. It'll be very cold. We have special clothing that helps us to not get cold. So we're wearing, when we're kayaking, especially when it's raining, we're wearing dry suits, and so that stops any moisture from getting in, so you stay nice and warm. That's something that we're both not used to at all. We also have beanies and gloves and thermal underclothing to help us stay warm. I don't think we'll have too much of a problem with being really hot.
We're not going to get hot. I think the maximum temperature we'd experience is about 18 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get hot, that's for sure.
But we have been very hot out in the water training over in Australia. Sometimes it's been as hot as, what would you say,
37 to 39 degrees?
37 to 39 degrees in the full sun. So you still have to wear very protective clothing and hat, put sunscreen on every couple of hours, and drink lots of water. And sometimes we'd have to just pull up on the shore and sit in the shade for a bit because it was that warm. And over here, we can just jump out of our kayaks and have a quick swim whenever we want, but it's not going to happen over in Alaska.
So our next question is, are you worried about wild animals like sharks or wolves, and what if you see some? So actually, sharks and wolves are not our main concern. So to begin with, sharks by rule are actually very calm creatures, and if you've spent some time with them in the wilderness, I mean, they are sometimes dangerous, but they're very misunderstood, and we have a strong passion for sharks. Without sharks in our oceans would die, because they are the apex species, which means they make sure that everything works in the ocean. So it's important to understand that sharks are very beautiful and important creatures, sometimes can be dangerous, but in kayaks won't bother us. Wolves we're not too concerned about. They generally don't bother people too much. One thing we are considering is bears. Bears have been known to be dangerous to humans, more so in cities where their natural environment's been disturbed. So we're making sure that we go to the toilet 100 meters from where we're sleeping, go to eat our food 100 meters from where we're sleeping, and making sure that we store our food away from where we're sleeping. So, and where we can, camping on islands, it's less likely that there's bears there. So we have some measures in place for bears. That's what we're mostly concerned about. But more than anything, we're very excited about the wild animals, and the wild animals are one of the reasons why we go, including bears. And having a deep respect for animals is a really important thing. And it's only once you get to have these amazing experiences with them that you learn to love them.
Yeah. Next question is, what type of food will you eat? So and that's a question from Mackenzie. We're both vegetarians, so we won't have any meat on the trip. We do want to see, though, if we might be talking to some fishermen along the way, and seeing if we could catch a couple of fish, but it's not a planned part of our diet. It's just if we so happen to cross paths with those people. Otherwise, we'll be cooking all of our vegetarian food before the trip, which is a lot of meals. Think about every breakfast, lunch and dinner and snacks for 3 months. So we're going to be cooking all of that and dehydrating it, taking all the moisture out of it and storing it with using no plastic and eating that along the way. And what we do is before each meal, we pour a bit of water into the container with the dehydrated food, and then it expands from something this little to something this big, and then we put it in our bellies. And then I'll just go on to the next question as well, because it's related, from Manawa, is what if you run out of food? So we have planned a breakfast, lunch and dinner for every single day, plus extra meals on top of that. And we also have a good support team. One of the people on the support team is helping us make all of our food. So if we're running out, we feel like we're getting through too much food, like more food than what we planned, then she's going to help us, and she's in Vancouver and she can send us some more food along the way.
And a question from Isabel, where will we put our food? All of our food we'll be storing in our kayaks. But because our kayaks are small, we can't obviously take 3 whole months of food with us. So we will have 6 resupply points, 6 points where we stop to pick up food from post offices along the way. So it's a lot of logistical work to make sure our food is going to be there waiting for us. We have our support team if that doesn't happen, but we will be carrying 2 to 3 weeks of food with us all times. So that's about all of our questions. Feel free to send through some more if you have burning questions we haven't answered, and thanks so much for inspiring us to keep doing this journey and for being a part of what we're doing. We really love to hear your questions and hear more about what you're doing at your school.
Yeah, and we'll think of you all when we're kayaking in the middle of the ocean.
Bye!
Bye-bye!